Our text for this week is the book of Esther. I'm not going to read all of it. I'll share some excerpts here and there, but I encourage you to read it this week. It's actually a really nice, fun read. The only tough part is some of the names, and you can skip them. You don't have to figure out how to pronounce all those difficult names from way back then. You can call them Dave if you want to. What I would like us to think about, though, is the story of Esther as a mirror for us today, to be considering how do those times continue to be in our day? How are they very similar to what happens in our society, and how are they dissimilar? How far have we come? How far do we have to go for equality for all people to count, for everyone to matter? And think about how does this story either support or ignore the great commandment to love our neighbor as ourselves? How can we use the information in the story to live better at fulfilling that commandment? Please join me in prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. In the opening of the book of Esther, we meet King Ahasuerus. He is the ruler of all of the land from India to Ethiopia. Lots of land, very powerful, very wealthy. He's been in power a while, so it's time to have a party and celebrate how great he is. So he invites everybody who's anybody, and they spend 180 days celebrating King Ahasuerus. And after 180 days of celebrating, they need to have a party and celebrate. So he throws a 7-day-long banquet with unlimited wine in the 3rd year of his reign. He invited all of the officials, all of the ministers, but this last banquet, he invited everybody. So the armies were there, all of the nobles from all of the provinces. I'm going to read just a little piece of that. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his officials and ministers. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and governors of the provinces were present, while he displayed the great wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and power of his majesty for many days, 180 in all. Then when those were complete, he gave for all the people in the citadel of Susa, both great and small, a banquet lasting for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white cotton curtains and blue hangings tied with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry. That I had to look that up. That's igneous rock with crystals, fine crystals embedded all through it. Marble, mother of pearl, and colored stones. Drinks were served in golden goblets, goblets of different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. Drinking was by flagons, without restraint, for the king had given orders to all the officials of his palace to do as each one desired. Furthermore, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the palace of King Ahasuerus. What could possibly go wrong? 180 days of partying, followed by 7 days of unlimited wine consumption? I don't see a problem. Except, at the end of this 7 days, King Ahasuerus, who's been hanging with the guys this whole time, is feeling like it's time to show off his beautiful wife, Vashti, who was said to be the most beautiful woman in the land. So he sends for her so that he can parade her in front of all these drunken men. Meanwhile, Vashti has been hanging with her women friends. And if you want to know what makes women strong, watch them hang together for a while. She says, no, I will not be paraded in front of a bunch of drunk men. I don't care if you are my husband. I don't care if you are the king of all the land from India to Ethiopia. I'm not doing it. Now this is a pretty big problem. What is a king to do when someone defies an order? So the drunk guys all have to have a consultation and figure out how to handle this. And Vashti gets banned. She is no longer queen. She can no longer live in the palace. She's now a nobody. Because if they let her hang around, what message does that give all the women in the land? That they're boss of themselves. That they're in control of what they do, for who they do it for. And we can't have that. So the men urged the king to write a new edict, that men shall be masters of their own homes. Whatever the man of the house says is the law, the woman will do as she's told. And again, I think, what could possibly go wrong with that? Given a little bit of time and a little bit of sobriety, Ahasuerus is feeling regret and loneliness. So his friends say it's time to replace the queen with someone better. Let's prepare a parade of all the most beautiful virgins in all of the land, and you can pick somebody way better than Queen Vashti. So they gather up all the eligible young women. In that group is a beautiful young woman named Esther. She's an orphan being raised by her relative Mordecai. Gorgeous, kind, sweet woman. Mordecai advises her, don't let them know you are Jewish. Keep that a secret. Let them assume you're one of them. So she follows her uncle Mordecai's advice, goes through all the procedures for being prepared to be presented in front of the king, and is the one who wins his favor and is crowned queen. Meanwhile, Mordecai has been hanging out near the palace so that he can hear what's going on with his precious niece, and overhears a plot. There are people who want to do away with Ahasuerus. So he gets a message to Esther, who gets the message to the king. The king's life is spared, and Mordecai's name is recorded in the book of records. Little time goes by, and the king has a friend that he promotes, Haman. Haman gets promoted, and he's feeling good. He's strutting around town because he's somebody. The king keeps promoting him. Obviously, he's somebody. And pretty soon, everyone is expected to bow down to him and show their deep respect for him. But Mordecai is a Jewish man of principle, and you don't bow down to humans. So he stayed on his feet. He didn't show the respect that Haman expected, and Haman became furious. So what do you do with your anger? You plot. And he talked to his friends, and he talked to his family, and he came up with a diabolical scheme. He went to the king, and he said, there are people who are dangerous. They're not like us. They don't bow down to you, king. They don't pay respect to you or to the people you've placed in positions of authority. I'm suggesting we set aside a day when it will be not only lawful, but encouraged for all of the good people of your kingdom to do away with these diabolical, evil people that are scattered among us. And in fact, if you'll create this edict, I'll deposit 10,000 talents of silver into your coffers as my appreciation. So I looked that up. That's about 1.4 million. So let me have my way past this law, and I'll give you $1.4 million. Kind of sounds familiar. You need money for your campaign? So the edict gets written, and it turns out those diabolical people are the Jewish people that have been taken captive over the years and are now scattered everywhere. Mordecai, of course, is horrified. And and he puts on sackcloth, and he mourns. And Esther hears something's going on with Mordecai, and she's worried. But no one in sackcloth is allowed close to the palace because why would you want to be a downer for the king? So she can't communicate directly with him, so she sends someone to find out what's wrong. So reading from chapter 4, Mordecai has been talking with the messenger from Esther. Mordecai gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show it to Esther, explain it to her, and charge her to go to the king to make supplication to him and entreat him for her people. Hathach went and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a message for Mordecai, saying, "All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside of the inner court without being called, there is but one law. All alike are to be put to death. Only if the king holds out the golden scepter to someone may that person live. I myself have not been called to come into the king for 30 days. When they told Mordecai what Esther had said, Mordecai told them to reply to Esther. And this is one of my favorite passages in the entire book of Esther. Do not think that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silence at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another quarter, but you and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you've come to your position for just such a time as this." Then Esther said in reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Jews found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf, and neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day, and I and my maids will also fast as you do. After that, I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. So 3 days of fasting and prayer and getting her courage up and hoping that God will intervene. And Esther goes into the inner court. The king immediately notices her because, of course, why wouldn't you notice somebody coming in when there's not supposed to be anybody entering, and also someone so beautiful and someone that the king really did care about. So he held out his scepter, and she came and he said, "What can I do for you? Why are you here? What do you need?" And she was a real smart person. She said, "You know, if I could be so bold as to ask you to do anything for me, what I really would like would be for you and Haman to come to dinner at my house tonight. I've prepared a banquet, and I would really like it if you came, and bring Haman with you too.